So I think I'm the first speaker who can say good day. It's still not morning. Good to see a house full on a relatively chilly Delhi morning. And I'm supposed to talk about artificial intelligence. Just to remind this dispersed group that about 75 years back, a guy called Alan Turing wrote a few mathematical computational engines. Post that, about 35 years back, a guy who's still alive called Vincent de Cerf decided to find a way to network computers. And that is indeed the starting point of AI. And today, with many young people in the room, it's almost like a post-AI generation, as if nothing existed before AI. So it's one of the most interesting times to be here and discussing AI, which my belief is one of the most transformational opportunities in humankind. Okay? Having said that, can I get my slides up? Okay, so can I get my slides up, please? Yeah. Okay. Having said that, I think an introduction is in order. My name is Amajit Gupta. I am the founder CEO of a small company called Lightstorm, which was born in the pandemic. It's an Indian-born global startup. But more importantly, I'm so excited to talk about artificial intelligence simply because of the context of where I belong and come from. I grew up in an era where I sold mainframes back in the day to automate many CIOs. Back in the day when you were a very coveted sales engineer walking into CIO rooms to be able to fix a Tata Burroughs or an IBM mainframe. I transitioned into the day where I launched the cloud for Microsoft when I worked for them for a decade. I had a good privilege of working on the other side of the fence, which was considered a China wall, which is to launch one of the first mobile calls ever in India, which was 1994, and then to build most of the networks from the supply and technology side for what you see today with the Airtels and Jios. And most importantly, I had the good fortune for most part of my life to work in this most exciting crucible of innovation and usage in Asia, and in particular in India. So that's a little bit of context to where I come from so that you can contextualize when I speak about what I speak. So I was asked to talk about AI. Most of the context, as I said, is left from the hype that goes on in the industry every day, where almost every topic, and I'm glad the previous speaker didn't blend in AI into his talk, because almost every topic is today AI-led. And I come from the tech industry myself for about 3 decades, so it's important to contextualize and figure out when there is a solution being sold for a problem to be found, as opposed to a problem having been found and a solution for that. The reason I say that is, this is a topic, and read my lips, which subsumes roughly about $25 to $30 billion of R&D every year. The size of the telecom industry in India is $30 billion. The size of the cloud industry in India is $10 billion. $25 to $30 billion of R&D every year is what Microsoft Azure Meta spends to crank up the learning models in what is being built as AI. It's a perfect storm right now. It's not about technology. It's about the perfect storm of having the right data sets. There's a plenty, both public and private data, some of it not so private. The learning models which I just talked about, which have been trained to be able to think through the data, and most importantly, the compute infrastructure. So I heard my previous speaker talk about security. I was born in an era where a A3K protocol would actually encrypt every voice call in the mobile side, pretty much unfazed. Today, every encryption algorithm is under question. Under question if it is quantum proof or not. Back in the day, I would sit in a mainframe, write about 20 days of code to be able to drive a computational algorithm to string together a number which is an 8-digit number to find out the hack key. Today, you can download an instance from a computational engine and pretty much do a 8,000 character hack in about 2 seconds if you know how to do it. So where does it leave all the encryption? That's the impact of AI which is coming up. Having said that, I do want to set context of what does it take to build transformation, particularly in emerging countries like India, and let's not live under any illusion where resources are scarce, innovation is high, and there is a huge expectation burden from the young people in this part of the world to be able to transform lives through AI. That brings me up to what it takes to go there. For us, we in Lightstorm see 3 different pillars. And whether you're a CIO of a manufacturing company, whether you're a bank, whether you're a technologist, whether you're a code writer, or whether you are just a CEO of a digital startup, make no mistake that these 3 blocks working together will make AI sing for you. Use cases, like in typical automation and productivity, is not going to cut it. The AI advancement is essentially the pillar of the learning engine. And the learning engines have today actually grown, have matured, and very, very excitingly so. Some of them are available on open source. Meta just announced that the entire learning engine is going to be open sourced out. I was with the chief scientist about 3 weeks back in Bangalore. There could be no more exciting times when he found a whole new learning model available for computational use, almost free of cost, hopefully through the open source foundation very soon. Whereas some others, like the fanciful ChatGPT, has been subsumed by my alma mater company, which is Microsoft, to be able to be licensed back through your office tools to give you better productivity. But this AI advancement is here to stay. So that's one pillar, and I'll talk about it a little later. The second is the digital infrastructure. Make no mistake, with the advance of these computational engines and the capability that they can render on you, the ability to be able to drive the underlying infrastructure, both compute as well as storage, is non-trivial. There's a gold rush today. Every time Jensen Young sets stage in any country, he sounds like the President of the United States. That's the reception he gets. After 29 years of innovation, that company has catapulted itself to be the most valuable company in the world. And I have never seen the frenzy for anybody trying to buy GPUs from NVIDIA as much as any time in the history of mankind. It's almost like a ration. It's almost like you line up and you buy for it. And the more important part is governments are being seized of it, whether it's Indonesia, India, even China, even though they don't like NVIDIA, or at least officially so. So that's the infrastructure part. And I'm glad to see this time there's momentum from governments and sovereigns to be able to drive that infrastructure, which will help creators, innovators, private enterprises, like many of you sitting in the room, to be able to use that infrastructure to drive innovation. The third part, which is close to the job that we do in Lightstorm, is the interconnected fabric. Today, when you watch up on TV, let's say Hotstar, a cricket match, you have 25 million concurrent users. At a point in time, it throws up about 10 terabytes of usage for that particular second. And designers are grappling to be able to solve for the 25 million concurrent users at a time, which is a non-trivial process by itself. They've solved it. Imagine when you have these large computational engines with the fanciful use cases sitting in data centers close to you, and you're trying to ping them to be able to drive your use cases. That's when the network really comes into the picture. And make no mistake, the network as you see it, which is your 5G mobile phones, the network as you see it, which is the fixed line that you use at home, is just the last mile. It's just the last mile. What's important is this interconnected fabric behind the last mile needs to wire up the 2 other pillars that I talked of. The learning engines in these AI zones, the data centers, and the infrastructure that it takes. That's how we build an interconnected nation which is capable of driving AI. So let's just deep drill into each of them. I mean, nobody grudges that learning models have come here to stay. And you can see it in real numbers. I'm told that the AI business in India is forecasted by nasscom to be $8 billion by 2030, hopefully more. It's growing about 35%. There couldn't be any better place to invest and grow, particularly if you have to think of real numbers. The second piece is the governmental support. I just quoted one instance of it, the language translation support of Bhashini, which I was told is launched about 8 months back. And then there is the AI mission. There is this push from the government to be able to build GPU kind of infrastructure, hoarding set I call it, to be able to rent it out to innovators to innovate on top of it. And lastly, which is just recent, which is that the learning models itself are becoming cheaper to access. For countries like us, it's incredibly important that we get to that access that we needed. Back in the day, when compute first opened up in India, the big debate of what's the cost of access to compute was a real debate. Today, learning models being open, and make no mistake, there is no learning models, learning engines being developed in India. Most of them have been honed over this $40 billion of R&D that I talked of, over years of research, mostly in the United States. What is the next best thing we can do? The next best thing we can do is to hone that learning model to be able to drive efficient use cases using the other two pillars that I just talked of. The second thing is about the digital infrastructure. Let's just go a step down. Back in the day, about 10 years back, data centers used to be essentially real estate hoarding. You have a large building, you have a large plot of land, build a nice infrastructure, pump it with 2 power infrastructures, good water supply, all of those nice things, and you rack stack a few servers. And there you go, you're a data center company. Fortunately, that's changed. Today you have some real solid players who know the technology of data centers. So you have Digital Bridge, which is the largest data center company in the world, working with who else? Jio and Brookfield to bring about data center revolution in India. You have STT, you have Equinix, the best of breed today setting up their shop in India with large data centers. And these data centers today are growing at an astronomical pace. There's a little bit of gold rush with respect to valuation, so don't get dazzled by that. But that aside, these infrastructure today are as good as anywhere in the world. If you add that to the compute infrastructure that I just talked about, I just heard, I don't know what's the last count, about 50,000 odd GPUs from NVIDIA got bought by various players in India to be rented out as a service. And to that extent, kind of opening the little bit of a lockstep of, in case there's hoarding globally, how do you work with it? But irrespective of that, I think we've got the infrastructure ready to be able to drive this AI innovation that we need. That speaks to the second pillar. The third pillar is to do with the interconnected infrastructure. Now that brings me to the issue which is very close to my heart. We founded Lightstorm in the middle of pandemic because we wanted to change the status quo of interconnected infrastructure in this country. And we even dreamed to build a startup out of India which could change the infrastructure across Asia. This was in early 2020, and the basic premise was networks need to be scalable, agile, and fungible. In other words, if you could order your food on a food tech platform, if you could do car hailing out of a car hailing tech platform, there is no reason why you couldn't do networking, and I'm talking of enterprises, of an on-demand platform. Back in the day, about 15 years back, I used to work for Microsoft, and every piece of software, we used to sell about $1 billion of software in this country. Every piece of software was in-premise, almost zero was on-demand and in-service. Today, Microsoft sells probably about 3 times that number that I mentioned in India. Every piece of software is on-demand, fungible, sold off a platform. There is no reason why networks shouldn't be migrating on the same platform. And that really brings me to the point that other than this fungibility and scalability, in the absence of fungibility and scalability, there is no way you can make AI work, let alone good cloud applications. Second thing about the network is the ability to have an interconnected fabric. Today it's rarely possible, almost rarely possible, that you have all your application either on-prem or completely in the cloud. Very rare. It's rarely possible that you have your applications in just one cloud. You'd probably have an SAP, you'll have an Azure as your stack, and all of that coexist. When you actually map these applications and where they reside, you'd find that there are about 75 to 80 large data centers, interconnection centers, and I'm talking about India, which need to be connected on this fabric that I talk about, which is super resilient, which is highly fungible, which is on demand, just like the cloud is. Just like you can spin up a VM session on the cloud at a finger point, you should be able to spin up large connectivity solutions across these states. Glad to say today we have that ability in India. At Lightstorm, we don't advertise much. We are proud to have built a company in India which connects all 80 data centers. In about 4 years' time, we transport about 1,200 plus terabytes of data, including every hyperscaler that there is in this country. We have replicated in Indonesia. We're replicating it across the Pacific. We have bought a company which connects US, Japan, Australia, very soon to be connected back to India. We're a born in India startup based on this. I couldn't say we really saw it coming, but it so happens when you're brave and bold and look out in the dark, something hits you. And AI is actually just such a boon for the business that we are in, which is an interconnected fabric. Remind you, we started when the pandemic started, so that was the first boom. What does it take to do that? I talked about it mostly. It basically means your network has to be programmable. Give me one service provider today who allows you to program the network. You heard of APIs. Some of who are coders, who have software world would know. In the software world, application programming interfaces are common. A 5-year-old coder will be able to write API script into a cloud and out of it. You can't do it on a network. Not because it's not possible, because it's never been feasible. Few companies have done it, about 3 or 4 large companies. I see Lumen's as a gold sponsor. These guys have done a very good job in the US, but they have done it in the US. They find it too tough to work in Asia, and we are happy to partner with them. But essentially, it means having the script of software expertise to be able to program the network, which is so different than programming software as in software. And then being able to bridge the two pieces together to make it scalable, improved access, and optimized. Today in this country, you could actually have a circuit from Marseille to Singapore to Bombay provisioned in about 7 seconds flat off a computer screen, and you could return it back in 7 seconds and pay it off your KYC credit card. That's possible. And that's what we believe is the future of making AI successful. Great learning models, superlative infrastructure, GPUs and data centers, and a connected fabric which behaves like the cloud behaves. I've been in telecoms and IT for a very long time. I can tell you, most of telecoms has been built with a philosophy which is called built to last. You go and invest tons of money, and as a promoter, as an investor, you're told this should last 50 years, maybe even 100 years. I built the cloud back in Microsoft. The guiding philosophy was built to change. You build something which can be changed in about 2 days flat with about 200 programmers and about $100 million. The philosophies collide today. And that's really where this whole change of, this whole thing of AI possibly will actually converge these trends together to create what we are calling as network as a service. In other words, the proposition on the table for AI to be successful is not just the GPUs and the data center infrastructure. We think it's synonymous to getting network as a service as the next step to get it completely successful. Easier said than done, theoretically very easy, but it costs you some very, very strong stuff which takes a lot of grit and teeth. First of it is capital. As an incumbent back in 2020, when I talked to my investors in the US, and most of them told me, what, you're going to telecom in India? Do you ever make money in telecom? We invested about $700 million in this country, all foreign capital born in India. And we make money today. We turn up about 1,200 terabytes, and it takes a lot of grit and teeth to be able to ask for the investment, put it on the ground, and then make it to work successfully and quote-unquote profitably. The second thing is about the integration. I alluded to it. You know, having been in the industry, I can tell you there's been two different sides of the world. The software world, which was essentially the cloud software IT world, the telecoms world, have been separate worlds. The tech world's all right. And software, just like Mark Anderson said, software is going to eat the world, it started eating into telecoms. To the extent today you can program a telecom network provided you know how to do that. And that's where the skill of getting what is called network DevOps, working with traditional software development, really spins up magic. I can tell you as a small company in India, we took up the challenge of opening up Sienna, Juniper, Nokia's APIs, which were statedly open. And it took a good 50 engineers across 6 countries to be able to break open the APIs and make it programmable. And then marry it with the APIs in Azure, GCP, and Oracle. And then finally get it married with the most important part in telecoms, in networks, which is the ability to bill your customer, which means the Oracles and the SFDCs. And then you have to orchestrate across that. That really is the skill, and I would urge young software developers to look at that area, because this is rare skills. It's extremely rare skills. When we built it, we went from Stanford University to Estonia to India to Singapore to Australia to figure out, and we could hardly find about 20 engineers who really knew their job, which is how we cracked the code. And these guys earn a lot. We have to pay a lot. You have to treat them really well. The third part is about India as a NAS leader. I'm strongly of the opinion that a country where you pay 9 cents to a megabyte, you have the largest user of data, and you potentially have the largest base of software developers and the biggest excitement for AI coders. There is absolutely no reason why network as a service should be an area where India should take the lead for the world. As we launched our product about 8 months back, we scanned the horizon across the globe. And believe you me, I have some very senior people, like Arun sitting in the front row from AT&T many, many years. We could find only 4 companies across the world who know this shit. There was a company in the US, there was a pioneering innovator in Australia, there was a company in Taiwan, and up against what we did. Fortunately, they didn't compete in our terrain because they found India and emerging markets too complicated. That tells me that India should be the crucible for investment and innovation in NAS, because the scale we can provide and the testing we can build over here dwarfs implementation complexities, let's say in a Taiwan or a Singapore or even a Saudi. As a small Indian company, I'm very proud and privileged to get incoming calls which I can hardly address, to be able to solve similar problems for Saudi Telecom, which is one of the richest telcos which exist anywhere in the planet. And that tells me India has the opportunity to leapfrog into AI by not only looking at learning models and use cases, but also looking at NAS as an opportunity to innovate, lead, and get world-class creativity working. That said, I think my time's up. I will not advertise for Lightstorm, but if anybody wants to speak, we have a stall outside, and I invite you to be able to talk to me and my colleagues if we could help you. Thank you for your attention and time.